Read my lips. No new taxes.
Yeah.
It's one of the most famous and definitely later most controversial pledges ever made by a presidential candidate.
Absolutely. It really defined a moment, didn't it?
Yeah.
For better or worse.
It did. And it was uttered by George Herbert Walker Bush, the 41st President of the United States. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into the extraordinary life of a man just full of remarkable contradictions, unexpected policy shifts, and a life of unparalleled service that, truly defined an era.
Yeah, his career spans so much. World War II, oil fields, high-level diplomacy, the CIA, VP.
Exactly. You might think you know his story, but we're going to unpack the surprising facts, the pivotal decisions, and those personal moments that really shaped him. We want you to walk away with a richer, more nuanced understanding of this complex leader.
And our mission for you, our listener, is really to help you get a rapid but still thorough grasp of Bush's significant contributions, the challenges he faced, and the enduring aspects of his often, let's say, complicated legacy.
Right. We'll synthesize the key info, highlight those aha moments, and make sure you feel well-informed, but not, overwhelmed.
Exactly. We're not just tracing a timeline. We're exploring that fundamental tension in leadership. Conviction versus pragmatism.
That's it. How does a man of immense privilege and deep personal conviction navigate a world demanding constant compromise? We'll see how that tension shaped his journey from war hero to president, and left this often contradictory legacy.
And what's really fascinating about George H.W. Bush is how his early life, steeped in that specific kind of New England privilege, it fundamentally shaped his character, but then it also spurred him to actively seek experiences beyond that.
Right, to push himself.
Yeah, this drive for independence, coupled with a deep-seated sense of public duty, it really sets the stage for a leader who valued service and practicality over pure ideology. That's a theme you'll hear again and again.
I think that tension is so key right from the start. So to really get the man, we have to go back. The formative years. George Herbert Walker Bush, born June 12, 1924, Milton, Massachusetts, into a world that for him was pretty much untouched by hardship.
Established, wealthy family.
Yeah, childhood mostly in Greenwich, Connecticut, those classic New England summers in Kennebunkport, Maine. Even visits to his maternal grandparents' plantation down in South Carolina. This wasn't just old money. It was like a lineage of American power.
It really was. His family tree was quite impressive. Prominent figures in industry, finance, on both sides.
Like who?
Well, his paternal grandfather, Samuel P. Bush, was a big railroad executive. And his maternal grandfather, his namesake, George Herbert Walker, the Walker in his name, led a Wall Street investment bank, W.A. Harriman & Co.
Ah, the namesake.
Yeah, and that grandfather, George Herbert Walker, he was known as Pop. And that's where young Bush got his nickname, Poppy.
Poppy Bush.
Okay. And it's important to remember, he was born right as the Roaring '20s were ending, but the Great Depression. His family's wealth meant he was largely unaffected by the hardship that defined that era for so many. He grew up with this inherent sense of stability, opportunity.
And he wasn't just coasting. He attended these elite schools, Greenwich Country Day, then Phillips Academy in Andover.
Top-tier places.
And even there, as a teenager, he was already showing incredible leadership. Senior class president, secretary of the student council, president of community fundraising, on the school paper's editorial board.
Wow, dizzy kid.
And captain of both varsity baseball and soccer. It's clear this wasn't just a bright kid. He was a natural leader, already drawn to responsibility.
Which raises that question. How does that background, all those advantages, prepare you for the harsh realities of the world, especially a world suddenly at war?
Exactly. Because on his 18th birthday, literally the day he turned 18, right after graduating from Phillips Academy in 1942, he made this pivotal, deeply personal choice, enlisted in the United States Navy as a naval aviator.
Wow. Voluntarily, not drafted.
No. Straight into active combat. A stark, courageous departure from that life of privilege. It was his first real independent act of service.
And his rise was fast. By June 43, he's commissioned as an ensign in the Naval Reserve.
Yeah.
One of the youngest pilots in the Navy, just 19.
Incredible.
Out in 44, he's flying a Grumman TBM Avenger. That's a torpedo bomber in the Pacific Theater, assigned to the USS San Jacinto.
And he got a nickname there too, right? Not Poppy?
No, his squadron mates called him Skin because he was so lanky. Quite a contrast.
Skin. Okay. His first combat mission, May 44, bombing Wake Island. Promoted to lieutenant junior grade by August, he was really in the thick of it.
And here's where things get really intense and profoundly personal. This moment defines a spiritual journey that lasted his whole life.
Okay.
During an attack on a Japanese base in Chichijima, Bush's plane gets hit by enemy fire. It goes down. Both of his crewmates, William White and John Delaney, tragically died. Bush, though, he manages to bail out. Parachutes into the ocean.
Wow.
He spends several harrowing hours in a life raft before being rescued by the submarine USS Finback.
Just imagine that, alone in the Pacific.
And it gets worse. He later learned that several other American flyers shot down in that same attack were captured, executed, and even cannibalized by the Japanese forces on the island.
Oh, horrific.
Absolutely horrific. So this close brush with death, knowing what happened to others, it deeply, irrevocably shaped him. It led him to ask that profound question. Why had I been spared, and what did God have for me?
You can see how that would change everything. Not just survival, but the search for meaning.
Exactly, a spiritual reckoning. It really set his future trajectory.
And he was decorated for his bravery, right? The Distinguished Flying Cross for that mission.
It was. And he didn't just go home. He kept flying. An astonishing 58 missions in total.
58.
Yeah. Completed 128 carrier landings, logged over 1,200 hours of flight time before Japan surrendered in September 45. Incredible service, especially after that trauma.
Just amazing dedication at such a young age.
Truly. And amidst all this intense wartime service, his personal life was also taking shape. He met Barbara Pierce at a Christmas dance back in December 41.
Before he even enlisted.
Right. They got engaged in December 43, married January 6, 1945 in Rye, New York while he was on leave.
A wartime wedding.
Yep. And their marriage would become the longest presidential marriage in American history at that point, 73 years. Barbara was absolutely his rock.
They built a big family. 6 kids, George W., Robin, Jeb, Neil, Marvin, and Doro.
But life dealt them another terrible blow.
Yeah, the loss of their daughter, Robin.
Their oldest daughter, Robin, died of leukemia in 1953. Just devastating. It profoundly impacted the whole family.
Another moment reinforcing that sense of life's fragility he must have carried from the war.
Exactly. It really cemented his faith, his sense of purpose. After the war, he enrolled at Yale. Accelerated program, graduated Phi Beta Kappa in 48 with a BA in economics.
Yeah.
In just 2.5 years.
Still driven.
Oh, yeah. And his Yale years weren't just academics. He was still involved in the trappings of his background, but also eager to prove himself elsewhere.
Like what?
Well, president of the DKE fraternity, member of the elite Skull and Bone Secret Society.
Right, the establishment stuff.
But he also captained the Yale baseball team. Played first base in the first 2 College World Series, showed that competitive drive.
A lefty first baseman, I read.
That's right. And like his father, he was even on the Yale cheerleading squad. A real all-rounder, blending the serious and the spirited.
So an Ivy League war hero from this incredibly privileged background, you'd expect him to go straight to Wall Street, right? Follow his dad, his grandpa.
That would be the logical path. But Bush, always that individual streak, had other plans. This is where that narrative of deliberate independence really kicks in.
Okay, so what did he do?
He didn't go to Wall Street. No. After Yale, he made a very conscious decision, packed up his young family, Barbara and little George W., and moved them to West Texas.
West Texas? From Connecticut. That's a huge change.
Huge. Biographer John Meacham points out it was a deliberate effort to step out of the daily shadow of his Wall Street father and grandfather Walker.
Because he's his own man.
Exactly. But he's also pragmatic. He knew he could still, call on their connections if he needed to raise capital.
Smart. Independence, but with a safety net.
That blend of ambition and practicality, wanting to chart his own course but not ignoring resources, that's foundational to understanding him. It pops up again and again.
And this is where he becomes a wildcatter, right? Drilling for oil.
That's it. His first job was actually selling oil field equipment for Dresser Industries, run by a family friend, Neil Mallon. He moved the family around these, often gritty oil towns, Odessa, Texas, Ventura, Bakersfield, Compton in California, then Midland, Texas.
A far cry from Greenwich.
Oh, yeah. A real immersion into a different slice of America.
And he quickly went from salesman to owner.
Showed real business sense. In 51, he co-founds Bush Overbay Oil Development with John Overbay, backed by Mallon and his uncle, George Herbert Walker, Jr.
Using those connections pragmatically.
Right. Then in 53, co-founds Zapata Petroleum Corporation, drilling in the Permian Basin. By 54, he's president of Zapata Offshore Company, specializing in offshore drilling. Moved the company and family to Houston in 59.
building something from scratch.
Exactly. Proving his worth outside the family name.
And it's in Houston he meets James Baker.
Yes, a friendship that became absolutely crucial. Baker would be one of his most enduring political allies. A connection forged in Texas that paid off for decades.
And the oil business was good to him.
Very. He eventually sold his stock in Zapata in the mid-60s for about $1 million. A testament to his success.
Which was a lot of money back then.
A significant sum. Now, speaking of this time, there's that recurring footnote, the allegation he worked for the CIA in the 60s.
Yeah, the Nation article in '88.
Right. He always denied it, and no real evidence ever surfaced.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that pops up occasionally.
Interesting aside. So this period, it shows his drive, his self-reliance. He built this career.
On his own terms, mostly. And that success, his growing profile in Texas, naturally pulled him towards politics. By the early 60s, people saw him as a promising candidate.
Democrats even tried to recruit him.
They did, but he turned them down. He felt the National Democratic Party favored big, centralized government. So you see this early conservative philosophy developing, that distrust of federal overreach.
So he was a Republican at heart and ready to get involved.
Definitely. Motivated by Republican gains in Texas, like John Tower winning a Senate seat in '61 and wanting to counter the far-right John Birch Society, he ran for and won the chairmanship of the Harris County Republican Party in February '63.
Okay, get his feet wet.
Then he backed Barry Goldwater in the '64 Republican primaries, aligning himself with the growing conservative movement.
And that led to his first big run.
His first Senate bid, in 1964, challenging the liberal Democrat Ralph Yarborough. He won the Republican primary runoff.
How'd the general election go?
Well, this is where it gets a bit complicated.
Yeah.
He attacked Yarborough's vote for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, arguing it was federal overreach.
Which was a common conservative position then, especially in the South.
It was. But, tellingly, he was privately uncomfortable with the racial politics of it, which kind of foreshadows his later willingness to buck the party on civil rights.
Interesting. So he lost that race.
He did, 44% to 56%. But even then, the New York Times called him a rising star, a best prospect for Texas Republicans. A loss, but it put him on the map.
A learning experience. So he pivoted.
To the U.S. House. In '66, he won a newly created seat in Houston, Texas's 7th District. And here's a sign of the respect he already had. He got a freshman appointment to the powerful Ways and Means Committee.
Wow, that's huge for a freshman. First one since 1904, apparently.
Incredible. Shows the connections and the promise people saw.
What was his record like in the House?
Generally conservative. Supported Nixon on Vietnam, but, again, that independent streak showed up.
Oh, so?
He broke with many Republicans to support birth control. And, significantly, he voted for the Civil Rights Act of 1968, the Fair Housing Act, even though it was unpopular in his district.
He can stand.
Yeah, a glimpse of the pragmatist, willing to go against the grain for what he thought was right. In '68, he also gave the Republican response to the State of the Union, focusing on fiscal responsibility, a theme he'd stick with.
He backed Nixon in '68, right? Nixon even considered him for VP.
He did. Nixon went with Agnew, but it shows Bush was already on the national radar. He won re-election to the House unopposed that year.
But he still wanted that Senate seat.
He did. Tenacious. In 1970, with Nixon's encouragement, he gave up his safe House seat to run against Yarborough again.
Second time's the charm.
Well, Bush won the Republican primary easily, but then Yarborough lost the Democratic primary to more centrist Democrat Lloyd Benson.
Benson. Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Then Benson. And Benson ended up beating Bush 53.5% to 46.5%. Another Senate loss.
Tough break. But it set him up for something else, right? That ladder of service.
Exactly. These losses didn't derail him. Instead, they led to this remarkable series of appointments, crucial roles that really broadened his expertise, especially in foreign policy. This was his masterclass in global statecraft.
Where did that letter start?
1971. President Nixon appoints him U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, his first big dive into foreign policy. First-hand experience dealing with the Soviets, the Chinese during the Cold War.
A baptism by fire?
Pretty much. He had to navigate Nixon's policy of detente easing tensions with the big communist powers. But he also faced a major diplomatic defeat right away.
What happened?
October 71, the UN General Assembly votes to kick out Taiwan, the Republic of China, and give the seat to the People's Republic of China, mainland China. A huge geopolitical shift, and Bush was on the losing side.
Ouch. But did he show any independence there?
He did. During the 1971 Pakistan crisis, involving genocide in East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, he actually supported an Indian motion condemning Pakistan. That clashed directly with Nixon's Pakistan stance. Showed some early principle.
And that moral discomfort you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, in '72, over U.S. bombing in Vietnam, he was clearly uneasy defending the administration line. Told reporters, "I think the best thing I can do on the subject is shut up."
Wow. Quite an admission for an ambassador. Speaks volumes.
It does. After Nixon's landslide re-election in '72, he appoints Bush chairman of the Republican National Committee, RNC chair.
Okay. Fundraising, recruiting, being the party's face, just as Watergate was exploding.
Exactly, the Watergate crucible, a huge test of loyalty and leadership. Initially, he defended Nixon strongly. Loyalty was big for him.
But as the evidence mounted.
Right. As Nixon's complicity became undeniable, Bush shifted focus. Defended the Republican Party as an institution, trying to salvage its integrity.
Smart move. Was he considered for VP then, after Agnew resigned?
He was. But Nixon, and then Ford, went with Gerald Ford. When the smoking gun tape came out, proving Nixon's involvement in the cover-up, Bush joined other party leaders in telling Nixon it was time to go.
Must have been incredibly difficult.
His diary entry on Nixon's resignation captured it perfectly. An aura of sadness like somebody died. A new spirit, a new lift when Ford was sworn in. A moment of national trauma he helped navigate.
So, next rung on the ladder.
Another fascinating, incredibly significant posting. Head of the U.S. Liaison Office in China, 1974-75. Basically the de facto ambassador before full normalization.
Why China?
Well, he'd been passed over for VP by Ford, partly due to a briefly damaging, though later cleared, news report about a secret fund in his 1970 Senate campaign. China was a challenging, high-profile alternative.
And that experience really shaped his worldview.
Profoundly. It convinced him that American engagement was vital for global stability. He developed this idea that the U.S. needed to be visible, but not pushy, muscular, but not domineering. That nuanced view, learned firsthand in China, would guide his own presidency later.
Okay, from China to the CIA.
Director of Central Intelligence, 1976-77. Ford appointed him DCI. The agency's reputation was in tatters after Watergate, Vietnam, various scandals. His job was to restore morale, public trust. A huge management challenge.
A complex time for the CIA too, right? Operation Condor in Latin America?
Yes, that's part of the context. During his tenure, the U.S. security apparatus was involved in supporting Operation Condor and various right-wing dictatorships there. A reminder of the difficult geopolitical realities and moral complexities leaders operate within.
Ford considered him for VP again in '76.
He did, but chose Bob Dole instead. After Carter won, Bush provided security briefings to Carter as candidate and president-elect, then stepped down gracefully on Inauguration Day, showed real class, commitment to smooth transitions.
So by 1977, he's out of public office for the first time in ages. What did he do?
Stayed busy. Chaired an executive committee at a bank in Houston, part-time professor at Rice University, stayed active in foreign policy circles like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission.
Laying the groundwork.
Absolutely. Meticulously setting the stage for his own presidential run. Gathering intellectual capital, keeping connections warm, preparing for the biggest step.
And that step was the 1980 campaign. Tumultuous is the word.
Oh, yeah. He's up against Ronald Reagan, the clear front-runner, and others. Bush positions himself as this youthful, pragmatic conservative, kind of like Eisenhower. He hammers his foreign policy experience, Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, Iran hostage crisis playing in the background.
And he started strong, right? Iowa.
Won Iowa. A close victory, 31.5% to Reagan's 29.4%. Famously declared he had the Big Mo momentum.
The Big Mo. But it didn't last. New Hampshire.
New Hampshire was brutal. The Nashua debate incident, Bush and Reagan initially agreed to a two-person debate. Then Reagan ambushes him, invites 4 other candidates on stage. Bush refuses to debate them.
Looked kind of stubborn, maybe elitist.
It played badly. Damaged his campaign severely. He lost New Hampshire decisively. A tough lesson in political theater.
And it was during this campaign he hit Reagan with that famous line.
Voodoo economics. Criticizing Reagan's big supply-side tax cuts.
Was that just politics, or did he mean it?
I think he meant it. It reflected a genuine fiscal concern. Bush favored lower taxes too, but he genuinely feared huge cuts without spending cuts would blow up the deficit, cause inflation. It was a core policy difference rooted in his pragmatism.
A difference that would come back to haunt him.
Oh, absolutely. Despite winning a few primaries like Massachusetts, he couldn't stop Reagan. Reluctantly dropped out after Reagan locked up the delegates.
Ended the dream.
Seemed like it. But then, the convention. Reagan's team tries to negotiate this dream ticket with Gerald Ford as VP, like a co-presidency. It falls apart dramatically at the last minute.
Right, I remember that drama.
So Reagan needs a running mate, fast. He picks Bush.
Wow. After all the voodoo economics stuff, conservatives weren't thrilled.
No, many weren't. But Reagan saw Bush's appeal to moderate Republicans as crucial to unifying the party. A safe pick. And Bush, thinking his shot was over, eagerly accepted. Politics makes strange bedfellows.
An unlikely alliance born of necessity and adaptability on Bush's part.
Totally. The Reagan-Bush ticket then focuses hard on the economy, rides that conservative wave, defeats Jimmy Carter in a landslide. 50.7% popular vote, 489 electoral votes.
And just like that, the critic of voodoo economics is vice president to his architect. Incredible turn.
Highlights the pragmatism required in high-stakes politics.
So how do you serve 8 years under someone whose signature policy you trashed?
With remarkable skill, actually. Bush navigated that delicate balance from 81 to 89. He kept a notably low profile, meticulously respected the VP's constitutional limits, avoided any public criticism of Reagan.
Learned from Mondale under Carter, maybe?
Exactly. That was his model. It earned him Reagan's deep trust, eased any lingering tension from the primaries.
And he worked well with Reagan's staff.
Very well. He deliberately avoided turf battles, had excellent relations, especially with his old friend James Baker, Reagan's first chief of staff. He served as president of the Senate, liaison to Congress, kept Reagan looped in, a trusted, discreet operator.
Then came March 1981, the assassination attempt on Reagan.
A shocking moment. Bush was in Texas, flew back immediately. Critically, when he landed, he rejected advice to take a helicopter straight to the White House lawn.
Why?
He worried it would look like he was usurping power in a crisis. That thoughtful, constitutionally respectful move made a huge positive impression on Reagan, led to regular Thursday lunches in the Oval Office, solidified their bond.
Reagan seemed to genuinely value his experience.
He did. He put Bush in charge of 2 important task forces, one on deregulation, another on international drug smuggling. Both popular with conservatives, helped Bush burnish his credentials with the right wing.
The deregulation one especially, reviewing hundreds of rules.
Right, making recommendations to curb federal government size.
Yeah.
Bush also oversaw the National Security Crisis Management Group, usually the NSA's job. And in '83, he successfully toured Europe, advocating for Pershing II missile deployment, a key part of Reagan's strategy, a real utility player.
And he made history briefly in '85.
July 13, 1985. Became the first VP to serve as acting president for about 8 hours while Reagan had colon surgery. Brief, but showed the stability of the system and his readiness.
As Reagan's second term went on, the Cold War landscape started shifting. Gorbachev.
Huge changes. Glasnost, perestroika. Bush was deeply involved in those discussions. He sat in on negotiations for the INF Treaty in '87, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Already thinking ahead.
Definitely. He signaled he wanted to continue improving relations if he succeeded Reagan, positioning himself as the steady hand ready for a changing world.
But the Reagan years weren't all smooth sailing. Iran-Contra.
The big scandal of the second term, 1986. Administration officials secretly sold weapons to Iran, diverted the money to fund Contra rebels in Nicaragua, bypassing Congress.
Where's Bush in all this?
He stated he was out of the loop on the diversion of funds to the Contras.
But was he?
Well, this is where it's nuanced. Biographer John Meacham found no evidence proving Bush was aware of the diversion. However, Meacham did criticize the out-of-the-loop claim because Bush was aware of the trading arms for hostages part of the deal.
So, not directly implicated in the illegal diversion, but close enough to the scandal to raise questions.
Exactly. It remained a political liability. Then, in July '88, he had to defend the U.S. at the UN after the Navy cruiser USS Vincennes accidentally shot down an Iranian passenger jet, Iran Air Flight 655. A very tough diplomatic spot.
All these experiences, oil, UN, RNC, China, CIA, 8 years as VP, they all built toward his own run in '88.
He started planning right after the '84 election. Officially entered the race in October '87. Powerful campaign team. Lee Atwater, his son George W., media guru Roger Ailes. Formidable.
He'd moved right during the VT years, endorsed a human life amendment, backed off voodoo economics, but conservatives still weren't totally sold.
No, many still question his ideological purity. He finished a disappointing third in the Iowa caucus behind Bob Dole and Pat Robertson. Looked like a tough slog.
But he turned it around in New Hampshire, like Reagan did in '80.
Exactly. Reorganized, focused hard on New Hampshire, got help from Governor John Sununu, ran tough ads attacking Dole on taxes, overcame a polling deficit, won with 39%. That was the turning point. His big mo finally arrived.
Swept Super Tuesday after that?
Pretty much. Rivals started dropping out. He secured the nomination.
His acceptance speech at the convention was a big moment, the 1,000 points of light.
Very well received. Laid out his vision, endorsed core conservative values, Pledge of Allegiance, school prayer, capital punishment, gun rights, and, of course,
Read my lips.
the iconic and ultimately fateful promise. Congress will push me to raise taxes, and I'll say no. Read my lips. No new taxes. Delivered with such conviction, became his rallying cry and later his Achilles heel.
He picked Dan Quayle as his running mate, little-known Indiana senator.
Yeah, aimed to appeal to conservatives, younger voters. A controversial pick that drew a lot of scrutiny.
The Democrats nominated Michael Dukakis, Massachusetts governor. He was ahead early on.
Dukakis was, but ran a surprisingly passive, low-risk campaign. The Bush campaign, led by Atwater, was aggressive. Attacked Dukakis as unpatriotic, liberal, soft on crime, famously using the Willie Horton case. It got nasty.
Became known for negative campaigning.
It did, though some argue it wasn't that different from past elections. Ultimately, Bush won decisively. 426 electoral votes to Dukakis' 111, 53.4% of the popular vote.
A big win. Fourth sitting VP elected president, first to succeed someone from his own party since Hoover in 29. Remarkable.
Truly cemented his place at the top.
So January 20, 1989, Inauguration Day. A new breeze is blowing.
And a world refreshed by freedom seems reborn. He immediately put together a strong, experienced cabinet. His buddy James Baker at State, Dick Cheney at Defense, kept some Reagan foes like Nick Brady at Treasury, John Sununu as Chief of Staff, Brent Scowcroft as National Security Advisor, a team built for serious governing.
And his presidency became defined by foreign affairs, didn't it? Architect of a new world order.
More than perhaps any other modern president. Especially with the end of the Cold War unfolding right as he took office. Initially, he was cautious, paused Reagan's détente. His team was split on Gorbachev, a real reformer, or just try to save the Soviet system. Typical Bush caution.
But events overtook caution pretty quickly in '89.
Dramatically. Communist governments collapsing across Eastern Europe, Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, East Germany. And crucially, Gorbachev refused to send in the Soviet military, abandoned the Brezhnev doctrine.
The U.S. wasn't directly involved, but how did Bush handle it?
Carefully. They deliberately avoided gloating, didn't want to undermine reforms or provoke a backlash. That restraint was key, showed real diplomatic skill.
Then the Malta Summit, December '89, meeting Gorbachev.
Pivotal. Bush came away trusting Gorbachev, believing he'd negotiate in good faith. From then on, Bush sought cooperation, saw Gorbachev as the partner for peace. The big issue then became German reunification.
Which Britain and France weren't thrilled about. Old anxieties.
Right. But Bush, working closely with German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, pushed hard for it, believed it was vital for American and European interests. A bold move, navigating complex history.
And it worked.
Paid off spectacularly. After tough negotiations, Gorbachev agreed. A reunified Germany could be part of NATO. Monumental. Reshaped Europe peacefully. Germany officially reunified October 1990.
But then things got tricky within the Soviet Union itself, nationalist movements.
Yeah, Gorbachev used force against independence movements, like in Lithuania. Bush was in a tough spot. Needed Gorby's cooperation on Germany, arms control, but also worried about instability if the USSR collapsed too fast.
So how did he react?
Mild protests, but carefully avoided direct intervention, walking a tightrope between human rights and global stability. His famous 1991 Chicken Kyiv speech even warned Ukrainians against suicidal nationalism, showed his deep concern about a chaotic Soviet breakup.
But he kept working with Gorbachev.
Yes. Signed the START A Treaty in July '91 Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty.
Yeah.
Committed to 30% cuts in strategic nukes. Masterclass in pragmatic, high-stakes diplomacy.
Then the August '91 coup against Gorbachev.
The hardline communist coup failed quickly, but it broke the power of the Central Soviet government. The USSR officially dissolved between August and December '91. 15 new states emerged.
The end of an empire.
Just like that. Bush met with Russian President Boris Yeltsin in February '92, declared a new era of friendship and partnership. They even agreed to START II in January '93, right before Bush left office, for more cuts. This whole period navigating the Cold War's end peacefully is almost universally seen as his greatest foreign policy triumph.
Steady hand during an unprecedented global shift. But that wasn't his only foreign policy test early on. Panama.
December 1989. Operation Just Cause, the invasion of Panama. The leader, Manuel Noriega, had old ties to U.S. intelligence back to Bush's DCI days, but was deep into drug traffic and annulled democratic elections.
So after a U.S. serviceman was shot, Bush acted.
Decisively. U.S. forces took control quickly. Noriega was captured, eventually imprisoned in the U.S. 23 Americans died, but it was seen as a swift success.
And it signaled something new.
Historian Stuart Brewer argues it marked a new era because Bush justified it based on U.S. interests, not just the old Monroe Doctrine or anti-communism, proactive American engagement.
Which brings us to another defining moment. The Gulf War, 1990-91.
Saddam Hussein's Iraq invades oil-rich Kuwait in August 90. Bush acts immediately. Sanctions, building a massive multinational coalition.
Why such a strong reaction?
Fear Saddam might attack Saudi Arabia or Israel next. Huge concerns about global oil access. Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia controlled almost half the world's oil then. Bush insisted on deterring unanswered aggression. Big principle for him.
And he was a master diplomat building that coalition.
Absolutely. Leveraged all those years of experience, got a UN Security Council resolution in November 90 authorizing force if Iraq didn't withdraw by January 15, 91.
Gorbachev's support and China abstaining were key there.
Crucial. Showed his ability to build consensus across divides, secured financial backing and troops from dozens of nations, Germany, Japan, South Korea, Arab nations, an astonishing diplomatic achievement.
And he went to Congress, too, even though he had UN approval.
Strategic move. Believed he needed congressional approval for national unity. Got it in January 91, though the vote was closer in the Senate.
Then Operation Desert Storm.
Massive air campaign first, then the ground invasion in February 91. Iraqi forces were routed from Kuwait in about 100 hours of ground combat.
Relatively low coalition casualties.
Remarkably low for such a large operation.
Right.
Around 300 American deaths, about 65 coalition deaths total.
And the public reaction back home.
Incredible. Bush's approval rating hit 89% in March 91, the highest Gallup had ever recorded for a president at that time. Cemented his image as a foreign policy giant, a conquering hero.
What happened after the war?
UN sanctions stayed on Iraq. A UN Special Commission, UNSACOM, worked to dismantle Iraq's WMD programs. A lasting, though obviously imperfect, containment strategy was put in place.
Shifting gears slightly, another major foreign policy initiative was NAFTA.
The North American Free Trade Agreement. Building on a U.S.-Canada deal from '87, Bush's team, with Canada's PM Brian Mulroney, started talks with Mexico. Lower tariffs, intellectual property rights, aiming for continental economic integration.
A big vision, but controversial.
Very. To push it through, Bush secured fast-track authority from Congress. Meant Congress had to vote yes or no on the final deal, no amendments, streamlined it, but angered opponents who feared job losses or wanted more environmental labor protections.
He signed it right at the end.
Signed it December 92, after he lost the election. Bill Clinton actually got it ratified in 93. It remained controversial for decades, eventually replaced in 2020. A major policy, but with a long, complicated legacy.
If you connect NAFTA back, it really shows his belief in global economic engagement. Trade is a pillar of foreign policy.
Absolutely. But while foreign policy was his undeniable strength, universally praised, his domestic agenda, especially the economy, faced much rougher seas. And that ultimately decided his political fate.
Right. The economy slipped into a mild recession in 1990. Unemployment ticked up from 5.9% in '89 to 7.8% by mid-91.
And those federal deficits inherited from Reagan. They shit $220 billion in 1990, tripled since 1980. Tackling the deficit became Bush's top domestic priority.
But he was boxed in, right? Imposed major defense cuts, and then there was that pledge.
No new taxes.
Yeah.
The ultimate test of conviction versus pragmatism.
Which led to the broken pledge, maybe the defining domestic moment of his presidency.
June 1990. Bush reverses course, says he's open to tax increases as part of a deficit reduction deal. Fiscal conservatives felt utterly betrayed, said he compromised too early. It split his base wide open.
But what was the choice? Stick to the pledge and let the deficit spiral, or break the pledge for fiscal health? A classic leadership dilemma.
Agonizing. He clearly felt the fiscal imperative was stronger, despite the political cost. After an initial deal failed, leading to a brief government shutdown, he signed the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1990, OBRA 90, in October.
What did it do?
Cut some domestic spending, raised revenues, notably by increasing income taxes on top earners. Not as deep cuts or high taxes as some wanted, but a significant package.
Damaged him politically.
Hugely. But in hindsight, it did help reduce the deficit and arguably set the stage for the budget surpluses of the late 90s under Clinton. Proved economically prudent, even if politically costly. Courageous, maybe?
Courageous or politically naive. Debatable. Beyond the budget, though, he signed some truly groundbreaking laws on discrimination. often overlooked.
Totally. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, the ADA,
Yeah.
monumental. Before that, disabled individuals had few legal protections against widespread discrimination.
And Bush strongly supported it, had a personal connection.
He did. His son Neil had dyslexia, which made it personal. He threw his weight behind the bill, signed it July 1990, called it the most sweeping anti-discrimination law since the Civil Rights Act of 1964, required reasonable accommodations. He famously said it took a sledgehammer to another wall.
A conservative president championing a major civil rights expansion shows that pragmatism, again, may be rooted in personal conviction this time.
Absolutely. Recognizing fundamental rights transcend ideology. He also signed the Civil Rights Act of 1991, finding a compromise on a bill he vetoed earlier over concerns about racial quotas.
What about the HIV/AIDS epidemic that was raging then?
He signed the Ryan White Care Act in August 90, the largest federally funded program for people with HIV/AIDS, a significant step. However,
Critics felt he didn't do enough, wasn't urgent enough.
yes, activist groups like ACTUP were highly critical, felt there was a lack of urgency, especially as HIV became the leading cause of death for young men by 92. A complex, often criticized part of his record where many felt more leadership was needed.
Environmentally, he also made some big moves.
He did, again showing that pragmatic streak. Worked with Democratic Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell to pass the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, major update curbing acid rain, smog. Also signed the Oil Pollution Act of 1990 after the Exxon Valdez spill.
Significant bipartisan wins, but not a total environmentalist.
No. He faced criticism from environmental groups for opposing stricter auto mileage standards. Balancing act again.
And that 1,000 points of light theme, that was consistent.
Very. Championed voluntary service to solve social problems. Tied back to his personal faith, sense of duty, believed in the power of citizens, community groups. The Points of Light Foundation, created in 1990, is a lasting legacy of that belief in volunteerism.
Judicial appointments always huge for a president. He got 2 Supreme Court picks.
First, David Souter in 1990. Largely unknown state judge from New Hampshire. Easily confirmed.
But turned out to be more liberal than expected.
Much more. Joined the liberal bloc. A big disappointment for Bush and conservatives, shows how unpredictable judicial legacies can be.
Then came the second appointment in 91, replacing Thurgood Marshall.
He nominated Clarence Thomas, a conservative federal judge, also black. Faced intense opposition pro-choice groups, NAACP. Then the explosive confirmation hearings with Anita Hill's accusations of sexual harassment.
Incredibly divisive.
Hugely. Thomas was narrowly confirmed, 52-48. Became one of the most conservative justices of his era. Those 2 appointments really highlight the long-term impact a president has on the courts.
What about other domestic issues? Education, immigration?
On education, he pushed for federal support for things like open enrollment, merit pay for teachers, ideas that influenced later reforms like No Child Left Behind. And immigration, he signed the Immigration Act of 1990.
What did that do? It seems counterintuitive for a Republican then.
Quite forward-thinking, actually.
Yeah.
It led to a 40% increase in legal immigration, doubled visas for job skills, granted temporary protected status to people from certain countries, lifted pre-naturalization English testing, and notably eliminated the exclusion of homosexuals from entering a country.
Wow. That's significant.
He even said, immigration is not just a link to our past, but it's also a bridge to America's future. A remarkably positive stance for the time.
And he had to deal with the savings and loan crisis, too.
Yeah, a big financial mess inherited from the 80s. He proposed a $50 billion rescue package, created the Office of Thrift Supervision. These were largely adopted in the IREA Bill of 1989. So you see these significant domestic actions, often bipartisan, but they just got overshadowed.
Right, because despite all this foreign policy triumphs, domestic achievements, his public image became a problem. The pragmatic caretaker label stuck. Lacked the vision thing, as he famously, maybe awkwardly put it.
Yeah, that phrase didn't help. And then that bogus New York Times story about him being amazed by a supermarket scanner.
Which wasn't even true, but it fed the narrative.
Exactly. Exacerbated that perception of being out of touch with everyday Americans. Unfair, but politically damaging.
And that narrative really took hold as the economy soured.
Precisely. Public focus shifted sharply from the Gulf War victory to jobs, the recession. His approval rating plummeted from that record high 89% after the war in March 91, down below 50% by January 92.
Went from conquering hero to politician befuddled by economics. A stunningly fast turnaround.
It really raises the question, can huge foreign policy success ever truly outweigh domestic economic pain for voters, especially heading into re-election?
Apparently not enough in 92. His re-election campaign faced huge hurdles.
That tax hike alienated so many conservatives. Pat Buchanan challenged him in the primaries, got a surprising chunk of the vote in New Hampshire. Bush won the nomination, but the party convention platform was heavily influenced by the Christian right, showing the internal tensions.
Then the general election. Bill Clinton, the charismatic Democrat, and Ross Perot.
The wild card. Texas billionaire H. Ross Perot ran a strong third-party bid, hammered the deficit, attacked NAFTA, appealed to voters frustrated with both parties.
How much did Perot affect the outcome?
He got 19% of the popular vote, one of the highest third-party shares ever. Hard to say exactly who he took votes from, but he definitely fragmented the electorate, complicated things for Bush, probably hurt him more overall.
And the result?
Bush lost to Clinton. Got 37.5% of the popular vote, 168 electoral votes. Clinton got 43% and 370 electoral votes.
Why the loss? Primarily the economy.
Overwhelmingly. 7 in 10 voters said the economy was not so good or poor. Unemployment was 7.8% on election eve. Plus, the alienation of conservatives over the tax hike definitely played a role. Couldn't hold his base together while reaching for the center.
Still, he left office with decent approval ratings.
Yeah. 56% job approval in January 93. Respect for his service remained, even if people wanted a change on the economy.
One last controversial act before leaving, the Iran-Contra pardons.
Right. In his final days, Christmas Eve 1992, he pardoned 6 former officials implicated in Iran-Contra, most notably former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger, whose trial was about to start.
Effectively shut down the investigation. Why?
Controversial. Critics said it was a cover-up, protecting himself or his colleagues. Supporters said the officials had suffered enough, it was time to move on. A final act of loyalty, maybe, but one that drew fire.
After leaving the White House, he didn't just disappear, built a different kind of life.
Yeah, built a retirement home in Houston, kept the Kennebunkport place, declined corporate boards but gave paid speeches, advised the Carlyle Group, stayed active, engaged.
And reflected on his time in office.
Co-wrote A World Transformed in '98 with Brent Scowcroft about his foreign policy. Published parts of his letters, diaries, gave us glimpses into his thinking.
And his legacy wasn't entirely behind him. That assassination plot in Kuwait.
Right, 1993. Iraqi intelligence tried to kill him during a visit. President Clinton retaliated with missile strikes. Shows how deeply intertwined his actions were with ongoing world events, even after he left office.
His family carried the political torch, of course.
Big time. Sons George W. and Jeb ran for governor in '94. George W. won Texas. Jeb lost Florida then, but won later in '98. His advice to them, chart your own course.
Underscoring his own belief in finding your own path, like he did going to Texas.
Exactly. And then George W.'s presidential wins in 2000 and 2004 made them only the second father-son duo to be president, Adams's and Bush's.
Led to the whole Bush 41 versus Bush 43 thing.
Right, needed to distinguish them. Bush 41 advised his son on some things, approved of Cheney for VP, but wasn't consulted on everything, like bringing back his old rival Donald Rumsfeld as defense secretary.
One of the most surprising things post-presidency, that friendship with Bill Clinton.
Totally unexpected. His former political rival, they teamed up for humanitarian work, tsunami relief, Hurricane Katrina relief, showed a real spirit of bipartisanship, setting aside past battles for the common good, resonated hugely.
But he wasn't afraid to be critical later on, even of his son's administration.
In those interviews with Meacham, yeah. He voiced concerns about Rumsfeld, Cheney, aspects of George W.'s foreign policy post 9/11. Showed a remarkable willingness to reflect critically, sticking to his own pragmatic foreign policy principles, regardless of who was in charge.
He stayed engaged in politics in his later years, supported McCain, Romney.
He did, and received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Obama in 2011, a great moment of bipartisan respect.
Then 2016, a real departure.
Supported his son Jeb's run, obviously. But when Trump won the nomination, neither George H.W. nor George W. endorsed him. And Bush 41 even revealed he voted for Hillary Clinton.
Wow. A former Republican president voting Democrat speaks volumes about his priorities.
Values over party loyalty in that instance, clearly. He and George W. also put out a joint statement condemning bigotry after the Charlottesville rally in 2017.
His health declined significantly in later years.
Battled Graves' disease, then vascular Parkinson's. Relied on a wheelchair from around 2011. And then Barbara died in April 2018, age 92.
His partner of 73 years. Her funeral was quite a gathering.
5 presidents and first ladies, a testament to the respect they commanded as a couple. His own final public act was voting early in the 2018 midterms.
George H.W. Bush died November 30th, 2018, age 94, longest-lived president at the time.
Jimmy Carter later surpassed him. He lay in state in the Capitol Rotunda, received a state funeral at the National Cathedral, buried at his presidential library in Texas, next to Barbara and their daughter Robin. Full circle.
George W.'s eulogy was very moving. He looked for the good in each person, and he usually found it.
A fitting tribute. So how do historians rank him now?
Generally in the top half. Polls put him around 17th, 20th, often described as that guardian president, the pragmatic caretaker, maybe largely content with things as they were. But does that capture it all?
That's the question. Is it an underestimation? His foreign policy leadership is almost universally praised. David Rothkopf called his administration's foreign policy thoughtful and well-managed, ushering in that New World Order, end of the Cold War, Germany, Gulf War, masterful navigation, prevented potential chaos.
But the domestic side, often seen as a disappointment by critics. Time magazine hit him on drugs, homelessness, racial hostility, education gaps, environment. Argued his handling set a poor example.
Fair criticisms from that perspective. The home front definitely felt less of a priority to some, and those problems persisted.
But here's the reappraisal. In recent years, especially compared to intense partisanship later, he's remembered fondly for his willingness to compromise.
Exactly. Vox highlighted those bipartisan domestic wins. WWII 90, the tax hike, the ADA, the Clean Air Act amendments, that surprisingly progressive Immigration Act of 1990. Significant achievements, often overshadowed, showing a commitment to practical solutions beyond pure ideology.
He racked up the honors, too. Time Man of the Year 90, Houston Airport renamed, CIA HQ named after him.
World Golf Hall of Fame, the aircraft carrier USS George H.W. Bush, permanent markers of his impact.
And tying back to the beginning, that spiritual dimension, his faith deepened after the war, after losing Robin.
Clearly reflected in 1,000 Points of Light, his pro-life stance, and that touching story that came out after his death, secretly sponsoring a Filipino boy's education and food for 10 years through Compassion International, using the alias George Walker.
Wow, just a quiet act of personal service.
Embodies that deep sense of purpose he carried his whole life.
What an incredible journey. From that young pilot asking why me, to the leader steering the world through the Cold War's end. As we've seen, George H.W. Bush's life was just this testament to service, marked by deep convictions, but also that essential pragmatism. You've heard about the spared pilot, the president navigating global shifts, the unexpected policy turns like the tax pledge, the big bipartisan wins like ADA and clean air, the complexities of his image.
And that presidency, once criticized for lacking the vision thing, is now often appreciated for its stability, that masterful navigation of a transforming world, even if the domestic side faced, tougher reviews.
So reflecting on his whole career, especially that shift from voodoo economics critic to tax hiker, and later questioning his own son's administration's foreign policy, it really makes you think, what is the toughest challenge for any leader?
Is it staying rigidly true to your stated principles no matter what? Or is it adapting pragmatically to changing realities, even if it means alienating your base, breaking a promise?
His life is just such a compelling case study of that constant tension, conviction versus adaptability. It resonates so much today, doesn't it? Forces you to consider the true costs and maybe the ultimate value of political courage.